Thank you very much for your introduction, and also thank you for the opportunity, Trish, to come along and speak this year at the ADA. It's a great pleasure. And also, I might add that I was very intrigued by Lucy's talk there, because I was just less than 2 weeks ago, 1.5 weeks ago, we just finalised our third successful negotiation with a highly restrictive publisher in relation to a book chapter and a journal article where we secured Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 with no fee, and the only requirement is that in respect of the book chapter, the chapter or a similar chapter could not be published in a competing textbook. So it's the third one that we've done through AusGOAL, and I'm very intrigued. I'm going to very much follow what you showed us there earlier today. Okay, so this afternoon I'd just like to spend 10 minutes or so showing you something publicly that hasn't been shown publicly in Australia before. For those of you who don't know what AusGOAL is, it stands for the Australian Government's, with an apostrophe after the S, indicating all of the Australian governments, Open Access and Licensing Program. Now, it's been around since 2010 and operates to support governments and publicly funded information, including data, to be made openly available. We do that in a variety of ways, whether it be from training to tools, to advocacy, to policy work, backroom deals, those sorts of things. But primarily we're known, I suppose, for supporting governments to implement Creative Commons licensing. We've had one curly problem with Creative Commons licensing over the past 4 years. It's got nothing to do with the licences per se. It's really about how you apply the licence, and how you apply the licence particularly in an institutional or departmental setting. What government departments do and large institutions do, I suppose, is publish high volumes of material. And in particular, what government would like is consistency when it publishes high volumes of material. And the query for us has always been, well, how do you at an institutional level apply a Creative Commons licence consistently the same every single time, with the appropriate copyright notice, the appropriate link to the appropriate licence, the appropriate attribution? It's always the same. Now, that process, with all due respect to Creative Commons, and it's a fantastic licensing framework and model, can take the public servant that is not used to Creative Commons probably about 15 to 20 minutes to do. And there's probably not much of a guarantee that they'll actually select the right URL for the right logo, if they do insert the logo at all. I've seen many times people applying a non-commercial, non-derivative URL underneath the CC BY logo. And similarly, I've seen documents coming out of government departments where the attribution is expressed in 3 or 4 different ways, and none of them are in fact the legal name of the entity or the organisation that's publishing it. So we decided to do some work on this and create a little bit of a tool in Microsoft Office as a start, because most government agencies and most institutions use Microsoft Office for Office 2010, 2007 and 2013. And I'll show you how we think it might work today. So I've got 2013 installed. You'll notice up the top of the screen there's a reference to Creative Commons. We've created its own ribbon bar. Now, the little logos might be familiar to many of you. Loosely, they're very much akin to the Creative Commons logos that you see on the license buttons. We had to design these specially with the assistance of Creative Commons headquarters, because Microsoft, in their wisdom, changed the way the ribbon bar worked a couple of versions ago, so we couldn't actually insert the Creative Commons logos in there as nice as we would like. So our dear friends at Creative Commons helped us out and created a bespoke set of logos for us. And you can see there that we cater for both the public domain tools and also each of the Creative Commons licences. I should add, we are only going to be supporting the version 4 of the Creative Commons licences. No other versions will be supported. That's consistent with the AusGOAL policy position we took last year, where after this is released and a new website's released, we'll no longer be supporting Creative Commons AU3 in our normal operational work. Importantly, we've got some settings in here that can be configured across an organisation such that it gives you a consistent attribution all the way through, no matter who's using it. So I could, up the top, insert the name of a government, for example, State of Queensland, and then the department's name, but here I've just put the National Library of Australia, the NLA web address. A few months ago, I decided to turn my web developer's life upside down and made it multilingual. So with the support of the Creative Commons affiliate community, we've actually got 8 or 9 languages that this will launch in very soon, and there will be more to come after that. And we also are able to insert the Creative Commons licences in multiple forms, with both the thin and thick logo, and for our friends in Europe, even with the Euro button logo. So I'll just show you an example of what we might do today. I understand that the librarians amongst you might understand what this hashtag means, given that tomorrow is Valentine's Day. But that's just sort of dummy text I'm inserting. Let's just say that's the report or whatever. And I want to license this under Creative, or importantly, the National Library of Australia wants to license this under Creative Commons attribution. I set it to ask me every time whether I'd like the full, medium or short, and I'll just select full and a thick logo. And voila. Thank you. I can assure you that the URL for all the licenses is absolutely correct, and when you click on the logo, it should ultimately bring you to the correct license deed. And when you click there, it'll take you to the correct license legal code, license URL, the National Library of Australia, and if it's a government department, it might be State of Queensland Department of X, and that will appear in brackets. It automatically sets it as 2015, or the current year of publication. We have 2 notice elements. Those of you familiar with the Creative Commons legal code will note that you can attach a number of notices to Creative Commons licensed material. So I see, for example, you might use the first notice area to deal with potential tortious liability. So say, for example, it was a book of maps, but you didn't want the maps to be used for maritime navigation because you're uncertain about their quality. So you could say in here, not intended for maritime navigation. Similarly, you can have, of course, nested copyright materials within something that's been published, and so we've got an area down there for that material to be filled in as well. So apart from that, we also, the visual element, we're also doing a sort of metadata insertion as well. If you go to the file, select properties, advanced properties, you'll note that we've included or made use of the generic comments field for both the license and the attribution. But we are also using the Dublin core metadata elements for custom properties, so that they can be interrogated by, many government departments have document management systems, and they can interrogate these sorts of things. And they can get it at one click. They can see all the documents that they've got, how they're licensed, what their titles are, when the licence was applied, the whole kit and caboodle. Now we're currently, now that we've got that in the Word document, we can of course convert that to PDF if you want to publish in PDF, and the UK government the other day announced that PDF-A is going to be an open standard. We've got all that pretty much nailed, but one thing we discovered with this was that when Microsoft Office converts the document to PDF, it doesn't always carry across the custom properties. It carries across the generic, but not the custom properties. So we're talking to our friends at Microsoft, because we've got very close links with them in government, about potentially a fix for that, or perhaps a service pack, something like that. To remove the license is very simple. You just press that button and you can hit remove. I've got about 1 or 2 minutes left, so what I might do is just demonstrate for you what we can do with Microsoft Excel, because open data is a very, very important area of publication these days. And similarly, you can insert the Creative Commons license into your data. I'll just establish some data on this sheet here, and I'll make this CC BY as well, maybe a medium form insertion with a thin logo. And I'll try that again. And what we do is we're leaving the data untouched, but we've inserted a new worksheet just for the license. Now, some of you might say, well, what do you do when you've got a CSV file or a comma separated value file that doesn't support multiple worksheets? Well, that's okay too. We've got a setting in here that can insert the license in the active worksheet, and I can do the same thing again, and there it goes. And what it's doing is inserting 8 lines of in the top of the worksheet, because people that we deal with a lot who are app developers say, look, we're always programming around the headers in columns of data. So if you can make it a standard set of drop-down away, we can program around that, and that's no problem. So that's the way we're doing that for the moment. We can't think of really any other way of dealing with it. Of course, they can remove that, but as I've indicated earlier, the metadata is still there as well. So this is the Creative Commons version. We're also going to produce an AusGOAL version. It'll contain some extra functionality, predominantly targeted towards large organisations and government departments of every level of government in Australia, that will contain links to our website and other tools that we use to support the insertion of Creative Commons and other licenses that we endorse. It's going to have a feature that will phone home. It'll tell me how often it's used, what data, or what application the license was inserted to, what license was applied. It won't tell me anything other than that. It's entirely anonymous data. It will tell me who the government department was in particular and in which jurisdiction. And we'll be publishing that data and reporting that data as and when the tool goes out. One of the other features we'll be adding in is an opt-in notification system. So if you want to opt in, you can receive push notices about things that are happening in the government space in your department in respect of changes to IP policy or in your jurisdiction, or maybe even an AusGOAL practitioner group meeting that might be coming up and you want to hit Eventbrite and go and subscribe to. In any event, we think that will take a lot of the risk out of application of Creative Commons licenses in a government and or institutional setting. It's going to be made free of charge, available free of charge and under open source license, both the Creative Commons generic version and also the AusGOAL version. So with that, I think I've done my well and truly over my few minutes. I'm sorry about that, Trish. But keep an eye out for it. It'll be coming out not too distant future. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.